The first thing I noticed was the taste. Not coffee, not blood, not the stale paper taste you get in the back of your throat after too many hours breathing heater air in a sealed cab. This was drier than that, metallic, like I'd held a coin under my tongue too long. Under it there was that hum again, low and steady, vibrating up through the wheel and the seat frame and the bones in my wrists. A sound so deep it barely felt like sound at all. It didn't rise when I gave the truck more throttle. It didn't fall when I eased off. It just stayed there, patient and level, like something electrical buried under the road. Outside, the night had gone dead. No wind against the mirrors, no hiss of snow moving over ice, no brush noise from the shoulder. In Alaska, even emptiness usually sounds like something. The road talks, the cold talks, and that stretch didn't. The manifest on the clipboard in my lap listed my arrival time at Deadhorse as 3 hours from then. The radio crackled, then dispatch came through in a voice I knew, flat and clean and almost bored. Driver Kincaid, arrival confirmed. Bay assignment transmitted. You're late on your paperwork again. I grabbed the mic and said my name before I could stop myself. Then another voice answered in the same breath, my voice. Copy that, dispatch. Docking now. Ahead of me, maybe half a mile out, a truck crested the long black ribbon of road. Same trailer height, same marker lights, same small gouge in the left rear mud flap bracket where I'd clipped a frozen barrier back in January. My transponder number flashed across my dash as the unit ahead pinged the system. My ID. Then the terminal beside my right knee lit up white, and in the screen printed one line. Duplicate detected, correction required. I remember staring through that dead, soundless dark at a truck that was somehow already me and thinking only one thing. If I was still behind my own wheel, then who had already checked me in? It had started earlier that night in Fairbanks with a briefing I'd heard before and should have distrusted sooner. By then I'd been running northern routes for almost 11 winters, long enough that I stopped telling people I was a truck driver and started saying I worked a line. That was how the old hands talked about it, like the road wasn't pavement and ice and blind curves, but a system you entered and served. You learned its habits. You learned where frost lifted the asphalt under the dark, where the crosswind hit hardest after a cut bank, and where black ice formed thin and glassy over packed old snow. You learned what the cold did to hoses, seals, valves, patience. You learned to check things twice, then trust them anyway, because if you didn't trust your truck, you couldn't take it north. I trusted mine, or at least I told myself I did. The yard in Fairbanks smelled like diesel and hot rubber and the sour sting of treated gravel. Floodlights washed everything flat and pale. Men and women moved between rigs in reflective jackets, boots grinding salt and grit. Forklifts beeped in the loading lane. Air brakes coughed and released in sharp white breaths. It was ordinary enough that I almost relaxed as soon as I stepped out of my pickup. That should have warned me too. I was always calmer at a yard than anywhere else. Paperwork, checklists, tire thump, light check, coupling, load seal, logbook. Process meant control. Process meant if you did your work right, nobody got hurt. Lorna Havelock was waiting in the dispatch office with a sheaf of manifests and that narrow, dry expression she wore when she wanted to sound helpful without inviting questions. Her office heater was turned up too high. The air inside carried that baked dust smell you get off baseboard units, and under it something metallic, faint but familiar. At the time, I figured it came from old filing cabinets and coffee left too long on a burner. She slid my paperwork across the desk. We've updated route protocol again, she said. Read it, sign it, keep it simple. I gave her a look. Again? Again. Lorna had the kind of voice that never rose. That was part of what made it hard to tell when she was lying, if she ever was. A lot of supervisors like to make a show of command. Lorna never needed to. She'd stare at you over her glasses and let silence do the work. I read while she watched. Do not deviate from the assigned route under any circumstance. Do not respond to dispatch messages that reference times you have not yet reached. If your truck logs duplicate mileage, report it and continue driving. Never stop moving between mile markers 120 and 180. I looked up. What's this for? Software sync issues, she said. New routing integration. Duplicate mileage is a software sync issue. It's a routing issue. And not answering dispatch is what exactly? It's procedure. That's not an answer. She took a sip of coffee and set the mug down with a soft click. You want an answer that helps you, Everett? I'd follow the procedure. I signed because that was what I did. I followed procedure. I did my inspections clean, kept my logs clean, kept my lane, kept my mouth shut. Companies like drivers like me because we made the work look simple. Load gets where it's going. Nobody calls in a problem they can't prove. Nobody makes the office nervous. I wish I could tell you that by then I was already suspicious that some part of me knew those rules weren't there to protect anybody. The truth is uglier than that. I read them, thought they were stupid, and felt proud that I was the kind of driver who could handle stupid rules without making a mess of them. That's who I was at the start, a perfect company man with winter road experience and a good safety record on paper. On paper mattered to me more than it should have, more than anything, and I went out to the truck and started the inspection. Cold bit through my gloves as soon as I checked the couplings. I ran my light check, knelt to inspect the lines, checked the trailer seal, checked the tires, checked the brake chambers, then checked the brake chambers again. I always checked brakes twice. A habit like that can look like professionalism from the outside. Most guilt does. Near the next lane over, another driver was doing his walk-around under the yard lights. Broad shoulders, reflective vest half unzipped, knit cap pulled low. He moved slow and deliberate, touching each wheel hub with the back of his hand before he moved on. Then crouched and looked at his brake lines with a flashlight even after the yard mechanic had signed off. I didn't know his name then, or didn't place it, and I just remember thinking he looked like somebody who trusted paperwork even less than I did. He glanced over once, saw me checking my own lines a second time, and gave a little nod like he understood something about me that nobody in the office ever would. Then he climbed into his cab and rolled out. I took the Dalton north under a sky so clear the stars looked pinned into black steel. The first hour was easy. Heater low, engine temperature steady. Road mostly open. The hum was there, but I told myself it was driveline resonance. Some vibration carrying odd through the cold. The cab air got drier as I climbed, that metallic taste settling farther back on my tongue. I drank water and it didn't help. Past the last real light, the world flattened into headlamps and reflective posts. Outside was white shoulder, dark spruce. I'm the occasional cut in the land where snow hadn't filled deep enough. No wildlife crossed. No wind rocked the trailer. Even the usual chatter on the radio ran thin. A couple of routine check-ins, a fuel call, then nothing. Looking back, that was the last easy stretch of road I had. The first discrepancy was small enough that I nearly laughed at it. My dash log showed I'd covered 9 more miles than I had. I knew the route. I knew where I was by the roadside grade, by the shoulder drift shapes. By the old scar on a retaining wall where a plow had kissed it hard last season. The odometer on the truck and the route log on the company tablet had never matched perfectly, not in winter. Not with tire wear and calibration drift and all the little lies machines tell. But this wasn't that. The route log jumped cleanly, even like a line had been skipped in a spreadsheet. I checked the marker on the shoulder, checked the GPS map, checked the mileage clock on my own dash. Then I checked the route tablet again. The number stayed wrong. The air in the cab tasted like I'd licked old batteries. I cracked the vent even though the cold needled through my sleeve. Nothing outside came in. No wind. No smell of snow. Just stillness. Dispatch. This is Kincaid on northbound line. I've got duplicate mileage in the route log. Please confirm. Static answered first, soft and grainy. Then the terminal chimed. One line appeared on the screen. Logged. That was it. No operator signature, no clarification, no instruction beyond what Lorna had already told me. Reported and continued driving, so I did. That sounds simple now. Stupid even. But when you've spent enough years in a cab, routine becomes its own argument. Electronics fail. Sensors drift. Software rolls out half-finished. Yards cheap out on updates. A company like ours treated every problem as a paperwork problem until somebody went cold by the shoulder because the actual problem hadn't been fixed in time. You learn that if you stopped for every bad reading, you'd never move freight north at all. Still, I kept checking. The next jump came 12 minutes later. 5 miles added in less than 2. I looked down at the tablet, looked back up at the road, looked down again. The line item showing my route progress pulsed once, then settled. Beneath it, my estimated arrival shifted forward nearly half an hour. I keyed the mic. Dispatch Kincaid again, mileage duplication continuing. The response came faster this time. Logged. No human voice, no tag. Just the same dead acknowledgement, as if I weren't reporting a problem but checking a box in some process I didn't understand. I should tell you that I was still calm then. Annoyed, yes. A little sharper on the wheel. But calm. My training held. If the system was wrong, the correct thing was to document the wrongness and maintain the route. That's what I'd always done. That's what had kept me employed. That's what had buried the first death under my name. I didn't let myself think that thought all the way through. It came up like something under black ice. Visible for a second, then gone again when I put my mind back on the road. Ahead of me, the center line shone dull and wet in the headlights. The trailer tracked clean. No drift, no pull, brake pressure normal, temps normal. Everything that mattered physically still obeyed the world I understood. The route log did not. An hour later, I rolled through a maintenance turnout and saw no fresh tire tracks in it. No plow, no parked state rig. Nothing. The snow at the edge of the turnout looked undisturbed, smooth as poured plaster. Usually even empty places carry evidence. A fox cut, a wind crease, a torn edge where a plow kicked powder aside. There was none of that. Just the road, the shoulder, the dark. The next terminal message arrived without me calling it in. Duplicate mileage acknowledged. Continue driving. It had my driver ID under it, my trailer number, my route, and a timestamp that put the message 12 minutes in the future. I stared at it long enough that the truck drifted an inch right before I corrected. Then the timestamp flickered. For one breath it read as if the message had already been sent half an hour earlier. Then it jumped ahead again. I know now what that flicker meant. I didn't then. I told myself clock drift, desync, satellite hiccup. Any of the 100 dumb explanations men like me use because the smart explanation is impossible. The radio stayed silent after that. Silent enough that I reached to turn the volume knob, thinking maybe it had dropped. The speaker hiss increased. No voices. Just that low hum underneath everything, steady as if it had its own engine somewhere below mine. By the time dispatch called me early, I was primed to resent it more than fear it. The radio snapped alive with no warning, loud enough to make me jerk the wheel. Driver Kincaid, arrival confirmed. Bay assignment transmitted. E-Verify seal status. I checked the dash clock on instinct. I was nowhere near Deadhorse. Not even close. The route still had hours in it, even with the false mileage leaps. My shoulders tightened under the seatbelt. I looked at the tablet screen and saw the arrival field populated anyway. Destination marked complete, time stamped in a block of pale green like a finished delivery. Then it flickered back to in transit. Then complete again. Lorna's rule came back to me exactly as she'd said it. Do not respond to dispatch messages that reference times you have not yet reached. So I didn't. I kept both hands on the wheel and stared at the road as the radio hissed. Driver Kincaid, verify seal status. I stayed silent. A second later, the terminal chimed, non-compliant. The word sat on the screen longer than it should have, a bright white on black, then a new line printed under it. Response required for timeline integrity. I actually laughed once, short and humorless. Timeline integrity. That was the point where it stopped feeling like bad software and started feeling like bureaucracy gone feral. Some office language stripped of the people who usually soften it. Not haunted, not malicious in any human sense, just procedural. Cold. Exact. Like a form letter from something that didn't know what a road was but still believed it could manage one. I tried Lorna on the company line. No answer. Tried again. On the third attempt, I got a recorded message in her voice. It wasn't one I'd heard before, but it used her cadence perfectly, each word clipped and dry. If you are receiving communications ahead of schedule, do not acknowledge them. Continue driving. E-routing depends on compliance. Then the line cut. The heater ticked softly. My mouth had gone so dry my tongue caught against my teeth. I took another drink from the bottle in the cup holder and the water tasted wrong too, metallic by association if nothing else. Outside, the dark leaned closer to the glass. No reflected eyes in the ditch, no branches moving, no drifting snow crossing the beam. The radio clicked again. Driver Kincaid, last call for arrival confirmation. Silence stretched. Then from the speaker, very softly, I heard myself breathe. Not speak, just breathe. I froze with my hand halfway to the mic. The breath came again, closer this time, as if somebody else was holding a radio too near their mouth and listening right back at me. Then the channel went dead. That was the last normal conversation I had with the company, even if it didn't sound abnormal yet. The timestamp on my route log switched again while I was watching it. For 1 second, it showed a completed delivery from later that morning. For the next, it showed me still 40 miles back from where I knew I was. Past and future trading places across the same little screen. Then headlights rose in my left mirror. I almost said thank God out loud. Another truck came up fast in the passing lane, diesel rumble finally breaking the dead quiet outside. The sight of it hit me like warmth. Something real. Another driver, another witness. Not a voice on a speaker, not a line of text. A truck with road grime and winter salt and a man inside it who'd either tell me I was losing my mind or prove I wasn't. He pulled even with me and held there longer than was polite. His trailer was company issue, and his cab was older than mine by a few years, paint chipped at the door seam, left side running light cracked and taped. He leaned toward the passenger side, looked straight across into my cab and tapped his radio. I grabbed my mic. You got a problem? I said. His voice came back rough, low, and maddeningly calm. Yeah, you. That annoyed me enough to steady me. Then pass. Can't yet, he said. Need you listening? I glanced at his placard. Halverson. Then I remembered the yard. Same deliberate walk-around. Same guy checking brake lines by hand. I'm listening, I said. Did your log start jumping? A knot formed under my ribs. How do you know that? He ignored the question. Did dispatch call you early? Who is this? Silas Boone Halverson. You can decide whether that matters after you answer me. I looked at the road ahead, and then back to his cab. His eyes were on me, not the lane. That alone told me something. No experienced winter driver takes his eyes off the road that long unless the other thing matters more. Yeah, I said. It called early. You answer. No. Good and bad. That's not helpful. I know. He eased back a fraction, then came up even again, tires singing softly on hardpack. Listen carefully, he said. The company rules are backward. I nearly cut him off. Then you're the one who's got a problem. Maybe. But I'm still alive? That shut me up. He kept talking. If your numbers repeat, stop the truck if you can do it safely. If you don't, it logs you twice. If dispatch calls early, answer it. That's the real timeline, not the one on your dash. And if you see your own truck ahead of you, leave the route. The words landed one by one, and each one hit the exact opposite of what Lorna had given me. No, I said immediately, absolutely not. They briefed us for a reason. He barked a laugh that held no humor at all. Yeah, they did. You expect me to take road survival advice from a man pacing me in the pass lane after midnight. I expect you to notice I'm not telling you what keeps the company comfortable. I'm telling you what keeps you from getting processed. I turned that word over in my head. Processed. The metallic taste in the cab thickened. Processed into what? Silas didn't answer right away. He looked ahead, then over again. Depends how late you are when it catches up. I should have disengaged then, reported him, dropped speed, let him go. And instead I stayed with him because I wanted another human voice on the line. That was the first cooperation. Thin, reluctant, but real. How many times have you seen this happen? I asked. Only enough. To you. Once was enough. That wasn't an answer either. He told me to read off my latest mileage entries. I did. He swore softly under his breath when two identical increments sat back to back. Then he asked what route dispatch had acknowledged me for. I told him. He swore again. What? It thinks you've arrived on a run you haven't finished yet. I know that much. No, he said, you don't. It means it already has a version of you somewhere on the line. The hum under my seat seemed to deepen when he said that, like the truck itself had heard him. This is crazy. Sure is. You expect me to believe dispatch is duplicating drivers. I expect you to believe what your own equipment is telling you. I wanted him to sound wild. I wanted panic, slurring, some sign that I was dealing with a man whose fear had turned into superstition. But Silas sounded the way mechanics sound when they tell you a bearing is going and you'd better listen now if you want to keep the axle under you. Calm, irritated, certain. Why are you helping me? I asked. That made him glance away for the first time. Because I know what the route likes. And what's that? Men who keep moving after they should have stopped. Something in me went cold that had nothing to do with the weather. He dropped back at last and got in behind me. We ran that way for several miles, my headlights laying over the black road ahead, his lights fixed in my mirror. Every now and then his voice came over the radio telling me to read a gauge, confirm a marker, compare the route log to my own odometer. He wasn't trying to scare me, he was building a picture. That made it worse. When I told him my brake temperatures were normal but the tablet had duplicated the axle readings anyway, he asked how many times I checked brakes on pre-trip. I said, twice. Thought so. What is that supposed to mean? It means the road doesn't just grab random men, Everett. It finds the ones already carrying something open. I never told him about the inspection report. Not then. Not ever. Not in so many words. But hearing my first name from him through the radio, hearing him say it like he had a right to, made my hand tighten on the mic until my knuckles hurt. Don't do that, I said. You do what? Talk like you know me. I don't, he said, but whatever you've got in your file, it knows you. That was when trust started costing something. The truck ahead appeared so gradually that for a few seconds I thought it was just depth playing tricks with the lights. a set of tail lamps far up the road. Then a trailer shape, then a cab outline. Nothing strange about that by itself, except I hadn't seen a vehicle ahead of me for nearly an hour, and the road there ran open enough I should have noticed it sooner. I lifted slightly off the throttle and narrowed the gap. Silas came on the radio at once. "Don't." "What?" "Don't close with it. You don't even know what it is." His reply was immediate. "Read me the mud flap bracket on the left rear if you can." A little pulse of cold ran through my chest, and I shouldn't have been able to see that detail yet, not clearly. But as I got closer, the trailer swayed just enough for my lights to hit the bracket at an angle, and I saw the bent metal edge where frozen barrier had scored it back in January. My January. "Silas." "I know." I didn't breathe for a second or two. The cab got smaller around me. Every sound sharpened, heater fan, tire hiss, faint rattling in the dash, that impossible low hum underneath. The truck ahead held a perfect pace, not gaining, not losing. Same model, same company paint, same winter grime pattern along the trailer skirts, same reflective tape peeled at the lower right corner of the rear door, same license plate, same truck, my truck. The terminal chimed once politely, almost gently. Nearby unit identified. Driver Kincaid. Status active. "No," I said before I knew I was speaking. Silas was closer behind me now. "Leave the route." "There is no route to leave. Any turnout, maintenance cut, shoulder if you have to. Lorna said do not deviate under any circumstance." Silas's voice changed then, not louder but harder. "Lorna is feeding you in." That hit with the force of a slap because part of me already believed it. The official rules had told me not to answer early dispatch, not to stop when the numbers repeated, not to leave if I saw my own unit ahead. Each instruction now lined up neatly with the exact thing that seemed to make the situation worse. It wasn't negligence, it wasn't incompetence, it was design. Betrayal doesn't always feel hot. Sometimes it feels clinical, a shelf inside your head tipping, everything on it sliding into one ugly line. The truck ahead transmitted again. My ID flashed across my dash. Not a close match, not a system confusion, mine. I toggled to the company channel and heard a burst of static, then Lorna's voice. "Driver Kincaid, maintain route discipline. Nearby unit is authorized." "Authorized for what?" I snapped. No answer. Then in my own voice from somewhere ahead of me, perfectly clear through the speaker, came a calm response. "Continuing as directed." I bit down so hard my jaw hurt. Silas cut in over the channel. "Don't listen to that. That's not you yet." Yet. I can't explain the way that word landed. Not fear, exactly. Recognition. Like hearing a diagnosis for something you'd been carrying untreated so long you mistook it for personality. The truck ahead drifted half a lane right, and then corrected exactly the way I do when I glance down too long at a screen. I saw the silhouette of the driver's shoulders through the rear window for a split second when the road pitched. Same build. Same head tilt. I knew then the thing wasn't using my truck to bait me. It was using me. Silas told me again to take the turnout. I saw the marker for one coming up, a narrow maintenance branch half buried under old drift. No fresh tracks, no guarantee it even connected through. I stayed on the main road. Even now I can hear the reasons I gave myself. A side road in that weather could dead end in bad snow. A loaded trailer on a maintenance cut could jackknife. Company would treat deviation as cause if anything happened. Better to hold the known road until I understood more. All of that was true, it just wasn't the real reason. And the real reason was that I had chosen motion over confession once before, and some part of me was built to do it again. Silas knew it before I did. "Everett," he said, and for the first time his voice held something close to pity. "If you stay behind it, you're agreeing there's two of you. I stared at the duplicate truck's taillights and said nothing. Then the mile markers began to count down toward 120. You could feel the zone before you entered it. The air changed first. Not colder. Thinner somehow, as if the cab had lost pressure and every breath had to travel farther to reach my lungs. The metallic taste sharpened until it felt granular on my tongue. Outside the windshield, the road straightened in a way no real road should. Not flattened, not leveled. Straightened. The curves eased out ahead of me as if distance itself had been redrafted. The shoulders ran parallel. The reflective posts fell into perfect intervals. Even the darkness on both sides looked trimmed back. No sway of brush, no uneven tree line, just black plains holding the road between them. Mile marker 120 slid by my left headlamp. Do not stop moving between mile markers 120 and 180. Lorna's rule came back with fresh force because the place itself made stopping feel unthinkable, not dangerous. Wrong, like putting your hand into running machinery. My gauges began duplicating. Oil pressure listed twice on the dash screen. Trailer temperature entries doubled. Fuel consumption split into matching lines. My route log added the same mile 3 times in succession. Silas was talking, but I only caught pieces. If the numbers repeat, that's the point you stop. No, I said, not here. This is exactly where. Rule says don't stop. That's why the rule exists. I kept rolling. The duplicate truck ahead maintained its distance. Silas behind me stayed just far enough back that his lights blurred at the edges in my mirror. We were a convoy of 3 with only one driver I knew to be real, and I wasn't as sure of him as I wanted to be. The hum deepened until I felt it in my teeth. I did something then I still can't believe I did. I reached down on that impossible straight road, eased the truck into neutral for one breath, and cut the ignition. Not long. Barely a second. Every trained instinct in me screamed against it. The dash lights dipped. The engine dropped. The hum did not change. It continued under the floor, full and level and patient as before, as if the truck had another heart somewhere below the engine block that didn't belong to anything built by men. I snapped the ignition back on so fast I scraped my knuckles on the column. The engine caught hard. Gauges surged. My hands were shaking by the time I got power back to full. Silas heard the hitch in the rev and knew what I'd done. You shut it off. Just for a second. And it kept going. He was quiet for long enough that I thought I'd lost him. Then he said, "Yeah." Not surprise. Confirmation. That single syllable did more to scare me than any scream could have. I was still trying to steady my breathing when the radio woke up on every channel at once. Company, emergency, open road band, all of it carrying the same flat automated voice. Duplicate confirmed, reconciliation in progress. My terminal flashed white. A printer under the console, one I used for manifests and load receipts, started feeding paper without being touched. Thin strips curled into my passenger footwell. Silas came over the channel. "Don't read anything it prints." Of course I looked. The first slip showed my route ID, my truck number, my name. Under status it said active. Under notes it said discrepancy under review. The second slip showed the same fields, except under status it said duplicate. The third slip began printing before the second had fully dropped. Outside there was still no wind. I remember that because some stupid part of me kept waiting for normal weather to reassert itself. For a gust to hit the trailer or loose snow to spin across the beams, anything to prove the world outside hadn't been edited. But nothing moved, and the road went on. The posts passed. The dark held. Then the radio spoke in my voice. "Copy reconciliation continuing as directed." I didn't touch the mic. Silas said my name once, sharply. I couldn't answer. My own voice came again, a little stronger this time, carrying the flat professionalism I'd spent years practicing with dispatch. the tone that said no trouble here, no need to escalate. Line is moving. Driver Kincaid acknowledging correction. The terminal added a new line. Archived exception located. I felt something drop out of me then, not courage, not hope. Pretense. The radio hissed and a string of data followed in the automated voice. Route, vehicle ID, winter season, inspection clearance, brake system, fatality. It didn't say the other driver's name. I think that made it worse. Because I knew it. I knew the exact patch of road where he'd gone through the guard and down the slope after the ice took what the bad brakes couldn't hold. I knew the report I'd filed before that run, the one where I marked a problem resolved because the yard was backed up. The load was time-sensitive, and I told myself the issue could wait one more cycle. I knew the signature at the bottom was mine. I knew the archive was clean, sealed, official. I knew the victim's family got weather and road conditions in a tragedy with no culprit attached. I knew I'd gone on driving. Silas didn't say anything for several seconds. He had heard enough through the open channel to understand what kind of man was in front of him. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Not disgust, not exactly, something heavier. "So that's the open thing," he said. I swallowed and tasted metal. "I didn't know it would fail." "No," he said, "you knew it might." That hurt because it was accurate. The radio answered in my voice before I could. Correction pending. I wanted to hate Silas then. Wanted him to become the enemy because I couldn't stand how quickly he had seen the shape of me. But he kept pace, kept talking me through gauges and markers and what little he understood. He didn't let me be alone with the thing in the speakers. That's what trust looked like in that stretch. Not forgiveness. Function. By mile marker 140, the system had stopped pretending to be just dispatch. Every message became language from an office without walls. Non-compliance recorded, duplicate unresolved, reconciliation in progress, and under it sometimes, in my own voice repeating the acknowledgments with that maddening professional calm. I heard myself say words I'd never chosen. Exception accepted. Route integrity maintained. Driver remains active. I started answering without meaning to. Little half words under my breath. Yes, copy, understood. The stuff you say reflexively when you live on a radio long enough. Every time I caught myself, I went colder. It felt like contamination in the purest sense. Not dirt, not illness, incorporation. Something administrative getting into my habits, my tone, my timing, and using the parts of me built for compliance. Silas must have heard it happening. "Stay off the mic," he said. "I'm not keying up." "I know. Stay off it anyway." What does that even mean? It means stop answering in your head. That made me laugh once, sharp and ugly. "Ooh, you think that's how this works?" Silas didn't laugh back. "I think that's exactly how this works." The road remained straight. Mile markers passed. My shoulders ached from holding the wheel too tight. The duplicate truck ahead was still there, still mine, still transmitting my ID at intervals clean enough to look official. Every ping pushed fresh entries into my route log, distance I hadn't traveled, times I hadn't reached, status changes I hadn't authorized. Then the printer started again. This time the manifest that came out wasn't for cargo, it was for me. Driver name Everett Nolan Kincaid, status active. Then, after a pause long enough for the paper to tremble in the tray, status updated, resolved. I pulled it free with fingers that didn't feel fully attached to my hand. Resolved, before the end, before any choice, and before I had even reached the top of the zone. That was when Loop 3 opened in me in a way I couldn't shut again. Not will I die. Not will I get out. Something uglier. If the system could mark me resolved while I was still thinking, still holding the wheel, still deciding, then what exactly counted as me in the first place? Silas told me to listen carefully because we were running out of time. It needs the duplicate condition closed before 180, he said. That's when it finalizes. How do you know? Because I've seen what comes after. What comes after? He hesitated. That was the first hesitation I'd heard from him all night. Voices that keep working. The duplicate truck ahead of me never braked, never drifted, never made a human mistake. It was a perfect performance of competence stripped of strain. Watching it was like seeing the version of myself the company had always wanted. All function, no refusal, no history except what could be entered in a field. Silas came alongside again despite the narrow lane and the slick shoulder. He was close enough now that I could see frost lining his side mirror, the grooves beside his mouth, the focus in his eyes. He pointed down, signaling me to look at his wheels. Then he touched 2 fingers to his brake lever and shook his head. Not yet. You have 2 options, he said over the radio. You stop in here and make it take you as the error, or you keep moving and it finishes integrating you. I stared at him. You're telling me to kill myself. I'm telling you the system wants 1 unit to close the gap. If a driver stops inside the zone, he's the route logs that unit is resolved and clears the duplicate. And if I keep driving, his answer took 1 breath too long. It keeps you. The moral weight of that didn't hit all at once. It unfolded. If I stopped, I disappeared. Maybe died. Maybe something worse. My identity wiped from the route the way a bad line item gets removed from a ledger. The archive under my name, the one I'd spent years letting stand, might vanish with me. Maybe that was justice. Maybe it was cowardice dressed up as sacrifice. Maybe the victim's family would never know even then. If I kept driving, I would continue to exist. Hands on the wheel, heart beating, but not whole, not autonomous. Something administratively absorbed, useful to the system that had found me because I was already compromised enough to fit it. One option was erasure, and the other was contamination completed. Neither felt survivable in any sense that mattered. Silas saw me working through it. He also saw what I wasn't saying. You think keeping the truck moving is neutral, he said. It isn't. I snapped back at him because anger was easier than choosing. And stopping is noble. No, he said quietly. Stopping is expensive. There was something in his face then I hadn't understood before, not fatalism. Decision. You knew this might happen to you, I said. Yeah. So why are you still on the route? His gaze flicked to the road ahead, then back to me. Because some of us get 1 run where we can decide what our name means when the log closes. That should have sounded theatrical. It didn't. It sounded like a man who had spent too much time thinking alone in a cab. I heard myself on the radio again. Your driver Kincaid remains active dispatch eligible. Eligible. The word made my stomach turn. Silas said, Listen to me now, really listen. The company rules don't save drivers. They save continuity. They need the line moving. They need voices on the radio. They need signatures in fields. They can get those without needing the original person intact. The official rules were designed to trap us. Once he said it plainly, I couldn't unhear the shape of it. Don't answer early. Don't stop when it repeats. Don't leave the route when you see yourself ahead. Every instruction funneled a driver deeper into duplication until the system could reconcile the error by absorbing one version and clearing the paperwork. Betrayal again. Colder this time. Institutional. For this. Silas drew even with me and shouted across the small gap through his open side window because maybe he wanted me to hear human lungs and not just speakers. It doesn't care if you deserve it. The wind should have stolen his words. There was no wind to steal them. I shouted back, Then why me? His reply came over the radio and through the air at the same time. Because you've already lived with a false record and called it survival. That was the worst thing anyone said to me that night. Because he was right and because some part of the road had known it first. We hit mile marker 162, then 163. The duplicate truck ahead remained untouched by the strain tearing through me. My manifest in the passenger seat listed me as resolved. My dash still showed active. My route log still populated future entries in my name. Every version existed at once and the system was trying to choose. Silas made the choice before I did. His brake lights came on. For one stunned instant I thought it was accidental, a tap, a reflex. Then his whole unit began slowing in the middle of the zone. "No!" I shouted into the mic. "No, no, keep moving!" He didn't. His truck fell back beside my trailer, then farther, then dropped behind as he eased onto the straight, dead road and brought his rig to a stop where Lorna's rule had forbidden any driver to stop. His voice came through once, steady as if he were calling out a scale weight. "It needs one of us to resolve it." I could have braked. I could have done it hard, dangerous, maybe enough to jackknife, maybe enough to die, but I could have stopped with him. I'd chosen my own line item, refused continuation. Instead, I kept moving. I watched him in my mirror as his cab door opened. The night outside his truck looked dense, almost solid in the headlights. Silas climbed down slowly, one hand on the grab bar, boots meeting the road with deliberate care. No rush, no panic. He stepped out into the lane and turned to face whatever the dark beyond my beams contained. Then he raised his arms, not in surrender to me, to something above or ahead or built into the route itself. I still don't know. His truck's transponder vanished from my screen immediately. One blink and it was gone, as if the system had deleted the unit the moment he presented himself to it. The radio cracked. Driver Halverson resolved, no impact, no scream, no sound at all. He was there in my mirror 1 second, and a man standing in the white tunnel of my taillights with his arms open. Then distance took him, or something else did. This is the scene people always ask me about when they realize I haven't stopped telling the story. They want to know what I saw happen to him. They want a visual answer. A body, a light, a shape, something cinematic enough to pin blame on. I didn't get one. That's what makes it worse. He might have died standing on frozen asphalt in a silence too complete for the world. He might have been erased so cleanly the route never needed to register his absence as death. He might have escaped by making himself the error. I don't know. His advice seemed helpful. His sacrifice looked like a warning, but even now I can't say whether he saved me or delivered me to the next stage by removing the only other claim the system had to resolve. That's the shadow on it. That's why I still hear him. I drove on. There are confessions that feel like action. This wasn't one. This was repetition. The same choice in a different shape. Keep moving. Let the consequence happen farther down the road where it might not technically be yours yet. As soon as Silas vanished from the transponder screen, my terminal cleared half its errors. Duplicate unit resolved. Reconciliation in progress. The duplicate truck ahead was still there, but it began to fade at the edges of my attention, less like a vehicle in weather and more like something already transferred to another system. Its ID kept pinging mine. My route log filled in fields I wasn't entering. And then the radio spoke in my voice again, cleaner than before. Reconciliation complete. I think that was the moment my name stopped belonging to me in the ordinary way. The cab warmed slightly, though I hadn't touched the controls. The metallic taste faded just enough to be replaced by something worse. The bland paper smell of fresh printouts. The little manifest printer kept feeding slips. Weight ticket, seal verification, delivery completion, dispatch assignment, all in my name, all time-stamped for places along the route I had not reached yet and some I had already passed. One slip drifted into my lap. Driver name, Everett Nolan Kincaid. Status resolved. Secondary assignment, active dispatch. I read it 3 times because it wouldn't make sense no matter how many times I heard the words in my head. Resolved and active. Finished and still working. Human language stretched over something it was never meant to describe. The road eventually bent again. Not much. Just enough for the world to feel possible in shapes I recognized. Wind hit the trailer once, light but real. The first actual gust in hours. Snow dust skittered over the lane. The relief that gave me was so intense it bordered on grief. Mile marker 180 passed. The zone was over, nothing got better. I tried to call for help and heard only myself answer. I tried the emergency frequency and got my own voice telling me to remain calm and maintain route discipline. I pulled the paper manifest apart, tore it down the middle, then tore it again. The printer fed a fresh copy within seconds. My hands remained on the wheel because I didn't know what else to do with them. And by the time the lights of Deadhorse spread low and industrial against the horizon, I already knew the arrival wasn't going to feel like rescue. The duplicate truck ahead of me had vanished somewhere in the last stretch, not by turning off or pulling away, but by ceasing to require the road between us. Yet when I rolled toward the yard gate, the terminal welcomed me back. Back. Bay assignment transmitted. A voice on dispatch acknowledged me before I keyed the mic. My voice. Driver Kincaid approaching dock. Paperwork discrepancy already corrected. I parked because the lines on the ground were there, and parking is what a driver does when the trip is done. Diesel smell from the yard hit me when I cracked the window, warm and oily and almost sweet after the sterile taste of the route. Men moved under lights. A loader beeped somewhere. Chains clinked. Ordinary work, the kind of life I had wanted back for hours. No one came to my cab. No one waved. I sat there listening to the radio breathe. When I finally looked at the dispatch board through the windshield, my truck number was listed in one column. My name was listed in another. Under roll, it didn't say driver. It said active dispatch. I left the cab once. I think I did. My boots hit the ground. I remember the crunch of packed snow. The cold should have cut through me. Instead, I felt it at a distance, like weather reaching somebody just ahead of my skin. A yard worker passed near enough to brush my sleeve and never looked at my face. In the office window, I caught my reflection and saw my mouth moving before I realized the radio in my hand was live. I was guiding a driver through the lower route, and I knew the wording before it came out. Do not deviate from the assigned route under any circumstance. Do not respond to dispatch messages that reference times you have not yet reached. If your truck logs duplicate mileage, report it and continue driving. Never stop moving between mile markers 120 and 180. I stopped speaking, or tried to. The radio continued in my voice for one more sentence. Routing depends on compliance. I don't know how long I've been on this side of it now. Long enough that I hear drivers before they identify themselves. Long enough that the route logs fill my shifts whether I remember sleeping or not. Long enough that sometimes the printer beside me feeds manifests with names I haven't heard yet. Arrival time still hours away, and I already know which ones will answer, which ones will ignore me, which ones will taste metal before they admit anything is wrong. Silas Boone Halverson never appeared in the archive after that night. No termination file, no fatality report, no payroll closure, just absence, tidy as if he'd never been assigned a truck at all. The other driver's family still doesn't know why he died. That part remains true. Maybe it always will. Sometimes when a northbound unit enters the zone, I feel my hands tighten around a steering wheel that isn't here. My shoulders remember the cab. My right foot presses against a floorboard. The hum rises under everything, steady and patient, and I understand with complete clarity that whatever part of me kept driving that night never really arrived anywhere. It just got reclassified. Tonight there's a new driver on the line. I can hear the nerves in the way he keys the mic too quickly. Can hear the professionalism pasted over it. The little pride of a man who thinks rules and competence are the same thing. His mileage has just started to jump. He reported it exactly the way I used to. The terminal logged him. He's a few minutes out from the first early call. My voice is already waiting for him on the radio. And I still know which rule to give him first.